Tell me what your life was like before you died.
I went to a playground. I was just, climbing up a ladder on slide, and at the last rung of the ladder, no pun intended, I climbed up the last ladder on the slide and I suffocated. Nothing, I was not able to hold on to anything. If you could imagine if you're drowning and trying to just grab onto a log or something, but there was nothing to grab onto. And I lost every bit of my own human breath. And that from losing my own human breath, I was really forced to surrender to something else that, I refer to in my book as the breath of eternity. There was nothing going on in my brain and my body. And once I surrendered to my breath of eternity, I felt my brain literally snap in half. And as if you're plugged into a wall and that plug is just yanked from that wall. And I felt this large crack in my brain. And that's when everything on the other side opened up, seeing my own spirit guides, being able to see infinite array of angels that were floating right in front of me. I was rushed to a hospital. I was responsive, in the ambulance, and I had to stay in a hospital for a couple of days. And thankfully I recovered. But it was really what saved me was choosing to say yes to life. I know a lot of near-death experiencers, they're told, hey, it's not your time, go back. And for me, I was given an option as to staying or going. And once I chose to continue living my life as that 3-year-old kid, that's when everything just kind of left and I was awakened to a hospital bed. Before I went to the hospital, I crossed over. I was on the other side. This is in the playground, and it was really due to suffocation as a result of whooping cough. Like I said before, I believe trauma could be a great gift. Certainly as a psychotherapist, I see that every day in my practice, that some people could really push away their trauma, or it could be so heavily imprinted that it's there with you for the rest of your life. When I crossed over, I experienced a beautiful, and I know my colleague Dr. Raymond Moody, Life After Life, highlights a lot of this, and I do give him credit, but I experienced myself ascending at an infinite rate, going higher and higher, into a familiar tunnel. The way that I could describe this is when we're in our bodies, we're used to almost like a limitation with how high we can go and how good we can feel. And when you're on the other side, they talk about infinity. Infinite isn't just limited to time. It's unlimited in its versatility. It's also infinite love and infinite euphoria. So for me, what I most remember is that there was no limitations with how high I was going and how good I was feeling and the energy that I was connected to on a deeper level. And that was what was happening to myself. And then it kind of unfolded, with the series of events after that. But what I most remember first happening was just myself ascending past this incredible, just diametric opposition of intense suffering to incredible euphoria. It's kind of like the Billy Joel song about bipolar disorder. It's just kind of like this intense depth of despair to this contrasting degree of euphoria that I felt. I fully crossed over. I remember into the back of the right side of my head seeing this beautiful golden palace, which God represents itself in different ways, but this golden palace, when I looked at it, it was so bright and so beautiful that I just almost couldn't look at it. And I was hearing beautiful octaves coming out of this and sounds and frequencies. And I knew that this was a depiction, at least for myself to understand, of where of all of life itself flows from. And the way that I could describe this in our vernacular has a religious connotation, but that would be the term God. But to me, it's the center point of where all of life stems from in its pure and truest form, which many viewers could be called the center of the universe or God, whatever your vernacular is. And I was connected to that particular point, and I just felt at home. I felt at peace. There wasn't any concern to have at that point. I felt in oneness with the endless pinnacle of life itself. There was sometimes in life we feel there's just a cap to how good we could feel, or the cap of reality. This was a euphoric, endless energy that had no cap to it. There was no limit with how beautiful, how euphoric, and how high it was. And so when you think of energy, we think of vibration. And on the other side, that's exactly what I felt, just vibration, ascension. And the vibration didn't have an end to it, didn't have a cap to it, didn't have a limitation to it. A couple steps later, I was able to see in front of me. This started off like panoramic to the sides, and then eventually I was able to see, in front of me. But to the sides of me, a couple steps later, I was able to see my own spirit guides, which was to the right and left side of me. Now, there's different terms for spirit guides. I've heard some people, like in UK, call them the guardian angels. Here in the US, we call them spirit guides. But spirit guides are angelic beings that we are assigned to before we get to this body. They're contracted to us. We're both called to each other, and they're here with us contractually before we get here to really kind of guide us in this life. And so when I saw them, there was a male and female guide, and it's the one element about my NDE, to be transparent, that I don't know exactly, because in the moment I knew their exact names and that came to me, and at times I feel like I know it, but that's the one thing in my NDE for whatever reason. I just kind of like Paul Sell, like I just call them the guides at this point, but I knew it was a male and female guide, and when I saw them, it was the most immaculate beings I could ever imagine. They were just beautiful and their radiance was shimmering. And then imagine they have that same degree of admiration feeling that you have towards them. Now multiply that by like 1,000,000, and that's what I felt like with my spirit guides when I did see them again, but also a feeling of just embarrassment that I forgot that they were with me this whole time. And I know guys are more prone to this, but I just blocked, I had my blinders on. I kind of felt them at times, but I just, wasn't connected to them as fully as I was in this moment. They were right with me. Next beings that I had, well, I felt myself just really pushed down the slide with my angels, as my spirit guides, as crazy as that sounds. Energies that could manipulate physical stuff. You'd look at lights and, they have the power. And I just felt myself pushed down the slide, and I was on the floor. I was irresponsive to all the people that were calling me. I saw my body, but my form was to the side of my body. So I wasn't in my body, but I still felt I had a form. And I saw people were shaking my body. They were like, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" And I wanted to shake them back to say, I am better than ever. I am, death is a fiction. And I could really empathize with how probably those who cross over feel on the other side, although they don't have any bad feelings about this, but they're constantly communicating with us and they're seeing us, but not always do we hear and see them. And so that's kind of how I felt. But I was able to look at all the people that I went to at the playground at that day, and I was able to really have transparency with who they are. You see in our culture, sometimes in our world rather, we reserve spiritual titles for, select few. We'll say if someone, is ascended, they're all of a sudden spiritual. But I love what Wayne Dyer would say, where he would say, you take an orange, you squeeze an orange out, you get orange juice. And you take each one of us, you squeeze each one of us out, there's pure infinite spirit. And that's what I saw from each individual that I saw, that they were so much more than the human emotional side represented, or what I thought of them. And I think that holds true with all of us. We are so much more than what we think and how we perceive our fellow brethren. But I was able to really see their auric fields and their spirit guides, and I just had a lot of information that wouldn't be privy to some of the best top mediums on the world. But really, a lot of those barriers to clear sight and clear vision were gone, and I was just a pure soul that was seeing these things with no possible filter barriers. But in that moment, I just saw an infinite array of angels that were floating right in front of me. Now, contrary to the spirit guides, the angels really had no distinct characteristics that I saw, and these were very child and youthful angels that I saw, or you could referred to as a cherub, but they all looked pretty uniformal in their presentation. They had a lot less human characteristics, if you will. They were just there sending energy, sending love, and I could hear their beautiful sound emanating from them. And I was just trying to look at them, but I saw they weren't really looking at me. They were just looking straight ahead and just sending love and not needing or wanting anything back in return, which is so far. And they were just kind of like minions of God, if you will, just sending energy. And I really just had to pinch myself, because it's just like, geez, this is like literally like looking at you right now. This is right in front of me, happening right in front of my eyes. The angels that I saw are just a thin layer separating this reality and the other side. They are right here around us. And it's just like you take a radio dial, and I'm sure you hear this at every interview, but true rings true. You take that radio dial, you just turn it just a slight fraction higher than this reality. All of these things are around us, even at this, surrounding this earth reality. They're here. So the other side in some ways felt like millions of miles away when I ascended to this infinite vibration, but also the other side is right here too. It's really, right here on Earth too. Just a thin veil separates the what we call the other side and this side. What happened next was it's common to a lot of near-death experiencers, and this happened to myself. You could imagine yourself being at like the shore of a beach, and I use the shore as like in a lot of my talks because it describes the cycle of life and death and eternity, where we come from this infinite ocean and we go on the shoreline, we come back to the ocean, and it's a continual cycle, inhale and exhalation. But imagine yourselves just being at that shoreline and just seeing your loved ones just slowly coming from that shoreline, from this infinite energy of this ocean of love that we come from, that we're connected to, just coming to you. And I was able to really see all these beings that were coming to me. And the best way I could describe it is these beings were what I would refer to, what is referred to as soul family or spiritual family. Now, I think that is an unfortunate term because sometimes people take that like we're not a part of a soul family. We all are, but there's a nuclear component to it where Shakespeare describes, we're just on this theater of life and we take on different roles and different acts, but we're a part of many ways of a similar nuclear crew and cast, but we're all interconnected in our own roles in this life. But I was able to see my own, soul family, and I became, again, embarrassed when I saw them. It wasn't their judgment of me. Again, I want to be clear that there's no judgment from loved ones on the other side. There's just awareness. There's love. But my judgment would be like, imagine you're going to the military and then you have this tremendous party, you're making all these promises and everyone's getting all hyped, and then 2 weeks later you're like, all right, I'm not feeling this, and then you go home. It's like you felt like a lot of people were let down. You had a lot of excitement that you generated, and that's how I felt. But then that thought was taken from me. It was just love, embrace, acceptance, from my soul family. And then, that's when everyone kind of came together, and I was posed this question between my guides, the angels around me, my soul family, which was what I would do. Would I continue, life continues here or there? Would I continue my life on the other side? Or would I continue my life, as 3-year-old Jacob? And I guess I was faced with the most difficult question of my life, so I posed a question back, and I just asked, what if I were to stay? What would my life look like? Why am I here? Which is the most common question that I'm asked in all of my seminars, and it's a very pivotal question that we have. Our whys are very important. And then I was given what's referred to as a life review, which for those viewers who haven't heard of it, a life review is really a panoramic understanding of your life, not only from what you see, but also through the lens of others and the impact that you have. And you could say, well, that must have been like a 2-second video that you saw, just 3 years old. And what I would say is it's not a matter of the years of your life, but rather the life within those years. And so chronologically, we could be here a very short time, but that could feel like an eternity in many ways for the greater good. But I was also able to really see a couple different past lives that I saw. I saw myself just spanning the globe, having a lot of different past lives and seeing myself in different, forms of the planet and different civilizations and cultures. But the most life that I really has drawn a lot of parallels with and why I had stuck most closely to me. And I don't know if your viewers would be interested in that, or if I would bore them by sharing that, but my last lifetime is the lifetime that I feel is most closely related to why I believe I had a near-death experience in, my life right now. I was just one with people, one with the message, and I saw the eyes of people that I was speaking in front of in the lectures and workshops that I would be doing in this life. And I just thought, like as beautiful as the other side is, this window to bring forward this information to others is something that I can't turn down. And then with that thought, I just decided to say yes. I understood the other side will always be there, but this window may not. This was a beautiful window that I wanted to venture down in this life. And then I just had doubt, where I just said, how do I know I will be able to attain all this? How will I know this will all work out? I was just began to doubt myself, turning down heaven. And that spirit and my guide just left me with a last thought, which was the power of trusting the path, the power of trusting your blueprint and your thoughts. So it's really to put a lot more trust in this infinite intelligence, more than our fears and our limited understanding. But really, it's sometimes, we're waiting to find joy at the end of the road. and we understand the road has no end. And so I think it's really finding joy within this moment, to recognizing that the biggest spirituality that we could have is from the depth and the vast and the rich experience that we have in this life. People like talk about ascension and doing all these things, and sometimes they bypass the actual life that's in front of them. And so the world's a beautiful place. Travel it, experience it. Hold nothing back, because what we experience here we carry over there, and our life is our afterlife in a degree, and the lives that we live are the loved ones' afterlives, because they're connected to what we do. So the afterlife is not after, it's here in this life too. But it's really about trusting and reframing the small sense of self, to really connecting to how incredibly expansive we all are on a deeper esoteric level.